Welcome to the Misfit One Lifestyles with Elizabeth Colin. She will awaken and connect with your Misfit One. Are you tired of the ups and downs in your life? Are you ready to live a healthy lifestyle once and for all? We are talking about all aspects of your life. Being fit is not just physical, it's also your mind and soul. Learn how to take steps in your life to move towards your goals. Elizabeth's goal is for everyone listening to the sound of her voice to get fit. Let's get focused, let's get intentional, and let's transform. Now here's your host, Elizabeth Colin.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Misfit One Lifestyles with your girl, Elizabeth Colin. Hunty. Today we're going to be talking about something that have affected us all. So if you are a human being, you should be listening to this podcast. We have my girl, Bronwyn Schweigerdt in the house. How you doing?
I am great, Elizabeth. I'm excited, always excited to talk to you.
Listen, this is so good on so many reasons. You are just such a phenomenal person, and I am just so happy you could be here because, listen, you are a person that can talk to people about shame.
Yeah.
Right. And before we dig all the way in, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is the role that shame plays in your life and how it affects us. But before that, introduce yourself to the people.
All right. I am Bronwyn Schweigerdt. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and my expertise is on anger. And I have a podcast that I put out just actually for folks who want to kind of bypass the therapy process. A lot of therapists aren't so great. Honestly, that's why I became one, because I couldn't find a good one when I desperately needed one. So that's why I have my podcast is, for people who can't be my direct clients, I want to get this information out there to the rest of the folks. And if you are interested in looking for a therapist, at least know what you're looking for. So get some detail, get some info on what you want out of a therapist so you can find the right one for you. But my podcast is called...
What is it called?
Angry at the Right Things.
Okay, so Angry at the Right Things is her podcast, but she brought up a very good point that I don't want to just skip over, because what you said was when you searching for a therapist, make sure that it's a good one. What are some of the things we should look for when we're searching for a therapist?
Yes. So the word would be, in one word, attunement. Attunement means a lot of things. It means listening. So not just like listening and nodding. No, what we call active listening or reflective listening, like engaged listening, like, hey, Elizabeth, when your dad said that to you, you must have felt really betrayed. So I'm paraphrasing. That's active listening. I'm naming the feeling that maybe you're not naming the word betrayal, but I hear it in what you're describing. So I'm saying betrayed. So it's really engaged listening, asking good questions. Tell me more, just like you're doing with me. You said, let's pause here. I want to explore more. So a good therapist is going to go, Elizabeth, tell me more about your relationship with your dad. Is this the first time this happened? Is this a pattern? So that is like an attuned listener.
Thank you very much. So, I didn't even think about that. And what's crazy is, would you just go to them and find out? Is that how you do? You go the first time? How would you know that when you in the search of it? Is it by references or what? Like, how would you know if they are a attuned listener?
Yeah, goodness, that's a great question. Yeah, So I will say a lot of people on their profiles, they list, all these like certifications or things they're expert in, but they don't say listening. So I'll tell you more. Like, I think there are the kind of therapists who all they do is listen, but it's not really engaged, attuned listening. It's just kind of like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. I've had that, not helpful. And
Not
then you find the opposite. Yeah, not helpful. Then there's like the ones that are kind of the opposite that use modalities that we call like CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, or DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And those are all the rage. However, they don't work long term at all. And I think they actually gaslight people in the short term. But anyway, so they will interrupt you 10 minutes in and be like, well, what about this? And I'm like, okay, you have no idea who you're talking to yet. And now you're telling them what to do, or you're suggesting something. So I go running. And then there's always the therapist who like start talking about themselves. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, you're talking about yourself. I have 45 minutes once a week to talk about myself, and you're taking up my time. Oh, hell no.
Oh my gosh, you guys, this is this. I'm telling you, these are this is truth, because we have anybody who have experienced therapy, which I strongly suggest for everyone. I have experienced that. I've been to one that's like, and I'm like, I don't even think they listening to me. I don't even really think they really hearing what I'm saying. They're like, or I've had the one too that tells you exactly what to do when you, girl, bye. I'm this age. I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
So listen, she is giving you some knowledge here that is very important in your search of peace and learning how to live in this chaotic world, right? So when you start off by being a therapist, because that's how come you became a therapist, right?
Yeah, I fell into a depression that it was so profound. I never thought I could get out of it. Like, it was debilitating. I
Wow.
was desperate. I went looking for a therapist. I tried multiple. And while I'm in their office, this is back when we did in person, of course. And while I'm in their office, I'm barely functioning. I'm thinking to myself, I'm barely functioning, but I'm pretty sure I could do a better job than this person. So part of my recovery from my severe depressive episode was going back to school, grad school, for the second time, changing careers and becoming a therapist myself, and learning along the way.
Yo, that is so amazing, because we as women, and many men, I don't really know too many men who actually make a big shift when they are adults. They kind of stay the same. They like, well, I'm a mechanic. I've been a mechanic. I'm a dime mechanic, right? Oh, I'm a this. So, but women, we have to we change all the time. So to say that you were in that deep depression, that deep, barely functioning depression, and going to seek help, and then realizing like, yo, wait, I could do better than this. And then going back, which also helped you get out of your depression, because you were
Yeah.
learning something new, and it was
Yeah.
engaging that part of your brain and gave you a purpose.
Yeah, it did all of that. It did all of that. And I will say, like, so getting back to an attuned therapist, this is the crazy thing about how humans work. When we feel heard, when we feel believed, when we feel like someone believes us, hears us, validates us, is interested in us, we're talking. As we're talking, we learn to know ourselves. Humans are so crazy. Words are so powerful, not just what I say to you, but as I'm talking about me, I'm able to make connections. I'm able to know myself, to see myself, and I need you to help me do that, right? We are blind to ourselves. And when we have a safe person who trusts us, who listens to us, who believes us, who validates us, who hears us, who wants to hear us, who helps us get to know ourselves. So that is creating a safe environment.
A collaborator, right? And
That's right.
is so great because, one of the things that we want to touch on too is about the whole shame thing, because the role shame plays in our lives. And I love the fact that shame is who I am, right? It's something you define yourself like, I am that, whatever it is that shamed you. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
So instead of, yeah.
Right.
So
And
if I make a mistake, instead of saying I made a mistake, shame says I now am a mistake. You're right. It's like we identify with what we do for good and for bad. And man, there's just no escape. We're eventually going to feel very shameful. And shame is a social construct.
talk to me more
Shame
about that,
means,
because
yeah.
once you said that, I'm like, oh my God, it is. But let's go deeper into that, because I'll give you an example of my life that would hold me in shame. And everybody already y'all know me, but here's the thing. I was very shameful of the fact that I've been married 4 times. Right? So I would be like, "Ooh, I don't know." I was like, but after a while, I'm like, forget it. I don't care. I did. I was married 3 times. Now I'm on my 4th marriage. Listen. And so it really shifted my whole attitude, my whole perception of who I am and what I think of others. So that it immediately popped to my mind when you said it's what others hold you to, because I didn't care that I was married 3 times. I'm like, I was happy that I decided to leave for my peace, my this, but because what others may think, I thought of it as shame until
Yes, but you were projecting shame onto others. So we project our childhood, what we learned as children. We learn shame as children. Shame is a learned construct. Children are not born into the world with shame. They learn it from their parents. And so it's learned, which is different than guilt. Guilt we can feel on our own, and guilt can be very productive. Like, hey, maybe I need to make amends. Like, guilt can be productive. Shame is never productive. It is 100% debilitating and not true. It's false, which is kind of what you're getting at. But it is something where we're shamed as children. And so now we project, when I have something about myself that I don't like, I'm not proud of, we project that onto people. Elizabeth, I bet you have met people who are like, oh, well, I hope you're married on your 4th time. That's great. Good for you. Right? People who aren't going to shame you, but we project it on everyone. Right? And we feel that in ourselves, and we identify with our shame. It becomes kind of like enmeshed in our body, in our persona.
Right. I love that, because you're right. It is our persona. It is exactly what we project. And that's a good point, because guilt is, oh, I made a mistake. Like, ooh, I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have had that cake. Okay, next time I won't have, right? Oh, not I am the mistake. Oh my gosh, I'm such a fat. I shouldn't have done that. I knew better than that. I've always known. Now everybody knows, right? That is the difference. And you said,
and yeah, so shame sees ourselves as there's no spectrum. We're either all good or all bad. It's this black and white construct, right? Where, being human, there's a big spectrum. Like, we make mistakes all the time, every day. I am both good and bad all the time.
I love that. And I even go a step further and say that there is no label of good and bad. You the one determines what's good and bad, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. Because I mean, as a therapist and just as a woman in my 50s, you look back in retrospect, like my depressive episode from hell, it was all bad when I was experiencing it. It didn't feel good. But looking back, it gave me so much insight into how depression works that I can now help others as a therapist. It launched me into this career. So was it all bad? Oh no. Everything's a double-edged sword. Every blessing has a curse, every curse has a blessing.
Like we used to always say, you can't pray for rain and don't want the mud. That don't work. You can't have both. So what's so amazing about shame and how a lot of times, like, your specialty is anger.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it show up? Shame can show up as anger a lot of times. So can we talk about that? Like, can we
Yeah.
talk about what anger management look like in that relationship to anger and shame, what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. So are you saying when we feel shamed, we get angry? Is that what you're saying?
Some people do. I was the anger. Some people get sad. Some people are depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could show up in so many
Yeah.
different ways. But
Well, depression is anger turned inward. I mean, that is so real.
did say, I got to say it again for the people. You said,
Okay, I didn't come up with this. This is Freud, but he was right on the money.
yes,
Depression is anger turned inward. Actually, anxiety is also anger turned inward.
bam, mind blowing right there. Because that's very true. I am not an internal person. Anybody knows that. I'm gonna let it out. Like, so anger was my go-to thing. Like, I was the kid who would push you down in the sandbox. I was that kid. Like, oh, right. So I want to talk to us about our relationship. I'm glad that I have worked through that. I am now, but it takes time. And I'm so happy that you're here so we could talk about our relationship with anger, how it's essential
Yeah.
for mental health and relationships.
Yes. So we all have a relationship to anger. So thank you for saying that. It's not about, no one is an angry person. When someone says, oh, I'm not an angry person, I say, are you a breathing person? Because that everyone has anger. So that's like saying, I'm not a breathing person. We all have a relationship to anger. If we feel ashamed of our anger, we're going to have a lot of anger turned inward. We're going to have a lot of suppressed anger hanging out in our body, making us mentally ill, like depressed and anxious. And we're going to have other symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, digestive issues, autoimmune, insomnia, or difficulty sleeping. So anger is stored in our body. I wish we had a camera that we can like see it hanging out in our body, but you have to trust me, it does hang out in our bodies. So our relationship to anger needs to be a healthy one. So you were saying that you used to kind of really externalize your anger. But what we need to do is just develop a healthy relationship with our anger. Sometimes we blow up because we're suppressing, and then it's too much all at once. So if I develop a healthy relationship with my anger, that starts with saying, you know what, Bronwyn, it is okay to feel angry right now, because that was not okay that they promised this and they actually did this. It's okay to feel that. That is not a bad feeling. And I view anger as a light on the dashboard of our emotional car saying, check under the hood. Something is in need of repair. So if I'm feeling anger, the first step is valid. It's valid. It's valid. It's here to teach me something. It's nothing to suppress or override or ignore or be ashamed of, but I don't need to blow up either. I can say, I'm feeling kind of angry that they promised this, but they didn't do it. So what do I need to do right now? How do I need to express that anger? And that's really through assertive speech and boundaries. So I can say, hey, you know what? That's not okay. Like, this is what you said, and this is not what's happening. And we need to figure this out. So that would be assertive speech. That's actually my anger doing that. So that's healthy anger, that assertiveness. And then a boundary could be like, if this doesn't happen within 48 hours, you will no longer be, my go-to. I'm no longer going to come to your business. And I'm going to write a Yelp review too, by the way. So just kind of a boundary, an ultimatum, accountability. That's anger. That is healthy anger at work.
You guys are welcome. Bada boom, bada bang, because Bronwyn told you right there. She gave you 3 things how to really deal with anger, have a healthy relationship with anger. Like she said, we all have it. And just think of it as a little monster inside. That's, a little gremlin inside that's like waiting, or it is still there because we all feel it. Like she said, it's within all of us. And to take it and be assertive, you could say, be assertive, like she said, hey, I don't like that. I don't like it when you call me that name. Don't do that to me, right? Assertive action, she said, or setting boundaries. And boundaries are, if you say that one more time, I will no longer be in your presence, right? So setting boundaries, I love, love, love all of that because it is absolutely facts. And there's ways that we can learn to deal with our trauma, how we can reverse our own trauma. But before we dig into that, I want to say, I know we talked before and we talked about why anger management doesn't ultimately work. Can you talk to us about that? Because you gave us a great way to have a relationship with our anger.
Yeah. Well, what I just proposed is actually what anger management would actually look like. I hate the term management because that implies that anger is bad and wrong morally or ethically or something, and something to be ashamed of, and we have to manage it. And so, listen, Elizabeth, if I'm seeing you showing a lot of anger, that's a symptom. So my goal as a therapist or as a human isn't to manage the symptom, it's to get to the root. Why is she exploding? And if it's that you're triggered, because we all have triggers, right? We all have triggers. My trigger is perceived or actual rejection. So if I feel, Elizabeth, if we're talking right now and I'm opening up to you and you start looking away or looking at your phone, I'm going to feel like I'm going to get triggered. And so I have to be aware of that. I have to own that's my trigger. I can't assume that Elizabeth isn't listening or that she doesn't think what I have to say is important. I can't assume that. That may be true, but I have to be aware of my rejection trigger. If you have a shame trigger and I am setting off your shame trigger, you have to remember, like, that's my shame trigger. That is my responsibility to be responsible for my trigger, right? So those are the deep things. I don't want to manage the symptoms of your anger. I want to find out what's causing it, what the triggers are.
Oh my God, because that's what I say all the time on all feelings. Sit with it for a moment. Sit with it. Don't try to woo it away, or, oh no, it's nothing happening, I'm not angry, ha ha ha. No, sit with it, because a lot of times, like you said before, that it could be anger inside. Now you angry within. So let's give them some tips on how they can do something easy and simple to reverse our own trauma. And can I just say this right now? You already gave me a tip when you said your triggers, like know your triggers, boo. And we do know our triggers. That's crazy. We do know what ticks us off. But we don't always recognize it. So talk to us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, actually. So, and I talk about this on my podcast. I have a co-facilitator with me on the podcast. I've actually led her in a few actual exercises like I do with my clients, just so the listeners on the podcast can do these for themselves. Cause I do experiential stuff. So we can get to the root and we can do the work. So one big thing regarding shame, this is so funny. A few years ago, so I also struggle with shame. And a few years ago, I went for a run. I don't know why this happened while I was out running, but all of a sudden, I realized where my shame came from. And it was my father, and it was this whole thing. But anyway, while I'm running in my brain, I am envisioning how he made me feel shameful by something he would do almost daily, and what that entailed. And I envisioned putting all of my shame in a big cardboard box. I had like this visualization and giving it back to him and saying, here you go. This is yours. Return to owner. This is not my shame. This is yours. And here you go. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. And something changed profoundly in me that day.
Wow.
Profoundly. If Elizabeth, before that day, if you had said to me, Bronwyn, I want to talk to you about something I'm kind of concerned about, I would have just gone to a place of like, oh my God, what did I do? And shame. That would have triggered me. I would have been like nauseous, waiting until we had our conversation, like shame. After that day, if someone says that to me now, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a different person because that debilitating shame, which is rooted in a distortion, is gone. So that's one exercise of just, envision, take time to envision where that shame came from, where it came from. Was it your mom? Was it your dad? Was it like, what do you envision? What's the memory that kind of embodies or is emblematic of that's most emblematic? And then envision giving all that shame right back, putting it in a big box, giving it right back to that person.
That's great. I love that. I love that. You know what's so great about that is like, I'm not a very, you can't really shame me. I can shame myself like I did with the 3 marriages, shame, shame, shame. But external never really bothered me. And it's so crazy because shame can be so, like you said, debilitated. Like you cannot move, you cannot function, you cannot because of shame. And it's one of those things that we have to get rid of. Just let it go. Because we really cannot function in a healthy relationship or a healthy environment if we are holding on to shame. It's like something is literally choking the life out of you.
It's true. It is choking the life out of you, and it is rooted, again, in a distortion. It's a lie. It's a way that you are viewing yourself that is deceptive. It is not true, and it will cause you to not be able to thrive and to flourish. It will choke the life out of you.
This is so awesome. Can you tell us again where we can find you? Where's your podcast?
Yeah, it's wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Angry at the Right Things is the name.
And do you have any social media we can connect with, or it's just the podcast?
I am in the works of getting like a Facebook social media site up, but I don't have it yet. I have to figure it all out. I'm not good with this kind of stuff, by the way.
We'll find you. We'll find you. Everybody will find you. Uh, it's important. I think it's important. And a lot of times you are right. We want to manage it like it's like you manage your money, or you it is not to be managed, but to see what is really the trigger and how we can return to sender. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so much for coming on today, because this has been wonderful. You have given so much information to all of us. And I got a question that I must ask.
Oh, yeah.
How do you take care of you? What does your self-care look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am my own therapist, and I do exercises on myself. So when something comes up for me, I will say this. Try to spend a lot of time in reflection.
Okay.
So I told you before we aired today that I didn't sleep much last night. And I think that's because I had zero reflection yesterday. And my brain will like want to process the events of the day and all my feelings, whether I'm awake or asleep. It kept me up all night doing that. So I try to take time to reflect, not meditate, but reflect. I mean, they could be overlap there, but sometimes that's when I run. Sometimes that's like just sitting, listening to music, but really intentionally reflecting on myself, my feelings, my life, my relationships, learning about myself. I'm always learning, and I'm always like realizing there's more to do. And my relationship with me, with like young Bronwyn, with my inner child, I'm realizing there needs to be more work. There needs to be more of a reunion between the two of us. I always see that. And so that's something I'm always working on.
That is phenomenal, because reflection is key to so many things. And in this crazy busy world, we don't really take time to stop and reflect. I always believe, and I tell my clients, that you are resourceful, whole, and creative within yourself.
Yeah.
But it takes time to sit with yourself for a moment. You have to be able to connect, like you said, with your inner child, or connect with the wise one within you. And that takes reflection.
Yes. And if we have shame, we shame our inner child. So we need to repair that relationship between ourself and our inner child. We need to stop shaming her.
Because she got you through a lot of stuff, believe it or not. She got you to where you are today. You should be thanking that little inner child for helping you survive through the crap you went through. And now you act like you don't know it. You know that's wrong. That's wrong.
Well, if you shame her, she's going to be angry at you and she's going to sabotage you. So we got to learn to attune to our inner child and repair our relationship with her, and to integrate. That's called integration.
I am like in awe. I'm in awe, Bronwyn. You did this. This is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom with us. Again, you guys, you know that it's important to love yourself wherever you are, and connect, take that time to reflect. Bronwyn gave you so many great nuggets, things that you can work on, how to find a good therapist, what to look for, the difference between shame and guilt. We talked about how to really reverse it. So listen, make sure you take care of yourself. Until next time, you guys, live fit. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Misfit One Lifestyles. Listen, when you are fed up and sick and tired of living this stifled, overwhelmed, and overstressed life, and you're ready to live the fullest, richest, and healthiest life by gaining more confidence, more energy, and more clarity, living in your best self, you know what to do, right? Go ahead, go to my website, misfit1.com. Sign up for our online courses, Creating Healthy Habit, so that you too can live fit, focus, move with intention, and transform your life.